Hi everyone, and welcome here to today's webinar, which I'm going to be talking a little bit about metaphysical anatomy. Like like you guys have been asking, like what is the name even for? Like go a little bit deeper into the concept behind what makes metaphysical anatomy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start with the basics, right? So what is metaphysical anatomy? What is metaphysical? So in this sense, with specifically what my intention was, is that we look at life and we always, it's like you always sometimes feel that there's something in your life that's not right. There's a sense for it, but you can't see it. You can't see something in your environment to prove to you or to validate how you feel, but you can feel it, for example, in your mind as a thought, or you can feel it in the physical body and knowing that something's there, but there's no actual proof of that. So for me, metaphysical anatomy is like bridging the sixth sense that we have, that aspect that we cannot see, and bringing that into thought, from bringing that more into our reality through emotions, through memories, and through thought patterns. So that was a very good question. So that's my answer to that. And I've been working and researching for the past few years to really bring home the concept of what we can sense that's out there, something that we cannot see, and bringing that into our reality and using that information to improve our quality of life, especially if there's something wrong with the anatomy. Now, for example, also another thing that I really would like to address is that's really important, and some of you also tapped onto that, is the concept of trauma. Like, is metaphysical anatomy still for me, even though I don't really remember any significant trauma? Well, in my opinion, absolutely. This technique is for anyone and everyone, whether you want to become a practitioner or not, whether you want to become a practitioner even just for yourself. This is perfect. The 5 days that you will spend with me can all be about working on you, and it can be about self-healing. So do keep in mind that the word trauma, it sounds like, this is serious, this is something that's only for people that's been through the worst of the worst. Well, metaphysical anatomy is also for people, for example, that has only been through, long-term severe stress, or they have phobias, or they're suffering from fear, or they're suffering from secondary gains where they can't quite get what they want because they keep sabotaging that. I'm sure some of you are out there, you know exactly what I mean when I say that. And keep in mind though, one thing that I don't normally bring to light in my classes is that almost every single person on this planet walking here around us is traumatized to one extent to another. Because bear in mind that even if you just have a family life or a job that is stressful for long periods of time, that can still build up as a trauma for the body, right? Anything that is strenuous on the body, where the body doesn't not necessarily get a break when it needs to, that can become traumatic, because you can start suffering from, for example, chronic fatigue. That means your body is internally traumatized. It's depleted from its resources and what it needs in order to live a happy and fulfilling life. And so, for example, what you also look at when someone, for example, feels traumatized, that can be when someone, for example, has a panic attack, or when you start suffering from anxiety, when you start suffering from depression, because that's the body telling you, stop, my threshold has reached this limit. Because our bodies has a threshold. We can only handle things to a certain extent. And those are expressions, they are symptoms of a much deeper problem, of a threshold that you've been hitting on and not realizing, not listening to your body and understanding where the small little warning signs are and have been, that's been building up to show you, I'm not okay. I need your help. I need you to start bringing in resources, whether it's through tools, through personal development, whether it's through diet, or whether it's through, for example, something as simple as more sleep, more meditation, perhaps extra exercise that can, for example, bring in change and relieve the body from that. Because keep in mind that even low-level stress, it triggers all the stress hormones in the body. And what happens is that the body goes into a subtle fight or flight state, and it also releases the stress hormone. Now, it takes 20 minutes for the stress hormone to calm down when the stress passed. But sometimes that stress is always in your face. It doesn't go away. You have it at the job. You go home. You might have it with your family, or with parents, or with friends. You might have it with a partner. So the stress constantly stays. So what happens is that after 20 minutes, when that cycle is supposed to calm down, it doesn't calm down. So what happens? The cycle resets. and it sends more new stress hormones. It sends new cortisol throughout the body. So the body is always staying in this state of stress. So of course, the first thing that gets targeted is the heart, mostly your vital organs, and also, most importantly, your immune system. So that's just to give you an idea that people think that they're not traumatized, but there's reasons why. There's something in you. For example, if you're watching this here with me, there's a reason why you're here with me. If you're looking at personal development work, there's a reason why you're reaching out to these tools. You're searching for some kind of support. Now the question is to support you with what? And now what is that what in your life, and why is it there, and how did it come about? So that's already something for you to think about and to sit with. So, and just to come back to what I was saying with the thought form and the emotions, all these things are symptoms to much deeper trauma and problems that happens in our life. Now, what happens if we, for example, have an implicit memory? Like, you can feel that there was trauma in your life, but you can't remember it, but you just know it was there. You know something is off. You feel the panic. You feel the stress of it. You can't sit still when you need to. You feel jittery. You want to walk around all the time, or you have insomnia. You can't sleep, or now you're suffering from depression. The list can go on and on, right? So now the importance, there's an absolute utmost importance of when we look at, for example, like thoughts and emotions, and how incredibly powerful this combination is, not just to only understand, for example, if we have an issue in our life, to understand the meaning of that and what could perhaps be leading, what could have led to that, but also understanding the thought and the emotions, and looking at how can we use these powerful tools that we have conscious access to, that we can feel, even though we can't see it, but we can feel it, and then use that and heal that to change how the physical body is reacting and responding. Now, let me explain to you, because I understand that it's easier said than done, for example, just to change a thought, because, like a negative thought also, that thought is also associated with emotions, right? So with the thought that we're trying to, for example, now change, and that can continue to keep bringing the negative thought that you're trying to change. So you're changing the thought, but you don't change the emotion. So the emotion hooks in the pattern of what you're fighting against, or what you're struggling with. And the emotion and the instinctive responses and stress and the cellular memory in the body then keeps reminding you, when you have that thought, it brings up the negative feeling. So it's a constant battle to consciously override the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, to tell that, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We're going to think positively. But the body's telling you, no, it's not okay. There's nothing positive right now. So the reason why this also is happening is that the emotional trauma and the stress is locked into the body, and it's also held into place by instinctive responses. Now, let me explain, because we're so busy looking for energetic tools around us, and what can we use outside of ourselves? But let's take a look inside of the physical body and understand how that coexists with our consciousness, and how the physical body plays such incredibly vital role in how we react and respond to trauma, and why it's so hard, for example, just to change a singular thought. So biologically, the brain develops from the bottom up. So that means when you're in the womb, in your mom's womb. And this, for example, starts at the instinctive responses. Now, the emotional sectors that develop, and that stems from out of that. And then the thinking brain stems from that, right? So hence why now why we go from thought to emotion. Now, here it gets actually even more interesting, as the heart plays also an incredibly big role in this. Now, our heart's magnetic field is 5,000 times stronger, and the field is actually produced by the brain, right? Even though this is our most intelligent asset as we perceive it to be, it's 5,000 times stronger than the brain. Now, for example, from the brain transmitters, and also then these memories that's also stored in the heart, and it's also felt stronger in the heart. Now, what can make emotions, for example, confusing is that memories tend to be genetically also stored in the heart. That means that you can, for example, be feeling or expressing your parents' emotions, right? So you can, for example, have like a glimpse of their memories and accept it as your own. So seeing a memory can also cause you to react, for example, independently on your own, right? So as your unconscious mind, it also scans the brain and the emotional for emotional resonance when this trigger starts to take place. And it starts to look for your own memories and your own emotional reactions so that it can relate to that. So the key takeaway here is that the memory is not the problem. It's how the memory makes you actually feel that becomes the problem. And that also has a direct impact on the health of your physical body. Now, your emotional reaction always comes with an instinctive response and vice versa, right? So from connections, from associations, and this turns into coping mechanisms, which then become secondary gains and hidden benefits. And that is why people don't heal. It's because of these hidden benefits that's also held in the unconscious mind. And in MAT, you will learn, for example, now how to easily and gracefully tap into that. So this is a very, very incredibly important part, because we underestimate how the body reacts to trauma and how it reacts even to just low level stress, and the emotional and instinctive responses and connections that's hooked into place and that's made and associated with certain sounds, voices, and your environment, and how that becomes a locked in stress trigger that can constantly be triggered in the future. And when that stress gets triggered, remember, the unconscious mind then reacts to it as if though it's happening, but the frontal cortex then normally has control to say, hey, there's nothing in my environment to really prove that it's wrong. Hence why we don't physically necessarily always react on it. Not in all cases, but in most cases that we don't react on it. But we still feel the emotional impact of that. So this is what we tackle, a big one of many aspects that we tackle in metaphysical anatomy. Now, another thing in MAT is that you're not going to relive the trauma, right? So in MAT, you will learn how to work with the instinctive responses, the emotional responses, right? Where and how they're stored, and how also trauma cycles, as well as incomplete trauma cycles, are locked in the body, and how that locks in trauma. And because of that buildup, that's constantly there, like this low-level background noise that's always in the body, just ready, waiting to be triggered if your environmental factors meets the resonance of that. And then you have panic, you have anxiety attacks, and you have depression. So in metaphysical anatomy, we release these cycles without the body having to relive it. And you will also learn how to work with different parts of the brain where we store these memories, right? And also in that case, as well as a bonus, actually promote neuroplasticity, right? So neuroplasticity is when you have neural pathways that becomes either weaker or stronger depending on how much we energize them. So of course, in this case, we want to lower the charge of the negative neural pathways and start to increase the charge of the positive neural pathways to help you to start completely changing your thoughts, your emotions, and also your life. And as we know, we're all genetically connected to our future generations who doesn't even exist yet, because their biological makeup and what I would call like an energetic grid that we're all connected to in our family line, the changes that you're making has a beautiful ripple effect into your future. And it's also shifting negative aspects in your ancestral consciousness that's been holding your DNA lineage back. So as you heal, there is just this beautiful ripple effect taking place in your DNA lineage as well. So also just another one that we'll be working on, some of you asked, so you talk about womb trauma. So when we look at womb trauma, we look at the time when you were in your mother's womb. So much happens there, because we know now that the placenta is not a barrier between the mother and the child, right? The protein cells, the lining of the placenta already starts to store trauma. Now, what happens also is, apart from that, we have the umbilical cord that holds trauma. We have the placenta sac that holds trauma. We have the amniotic fluid that also transmits your mother's emotions and trauma, and it's constantly penetrating into your physical body. Depending on your biological predispositions, it shows also where and how these traumas of your mom that she felt while she was pregnant with you can be held and stored in those different aspects, and how that trauma can actually come alive and be expressed in your life as you mature, when certain emotional dynamics and circumstances and people can trigger that. And you can end up feeling it almost like that you're living someone else's life. And I'm sure that some of you can relate to that you feel, I'm feeling all these feelings. It doesn't feel like mine, but it feels so real. So I have to do something about it. If you can relate to that, then you are going to love this day. Absolutely love this day. It's extremely powerful. And that's a day where you're going to call back your power from those 9 months. And throughout the other 4 days as well, because it's 5 days this event. The other 4 days, you're going to be calling your power back from your DNA lineage. You're going to be changing your thoughts, your emotions, releasing trauma cycles, completely healing stagnant aspects in the biological makeup that you're feeling to set you free so that the physical body can be at peace and work in harmony with your consciousness and your soul. So that is my ultimate goal that I'm going to be leading you through, and 100% guaranteed. If you think that you're not intuitive, think again. This course is going to burst open your intuition, absolutely burst it open. And if you don't want to heal your life, if you don't want to improve your quality of life and heal your future and your past, then this course is not for you. See you next time. And until then, be the light that you are.